Faisal Kassim, and tonight we will be talking about the rampant recurring conflict over and over again in the Northeastern region. And joining me to talk about this important topic, especially to the Muslim community, because we are talking about our brethren who are losing our lives day in, day out, night in, night out, raid after raid, attack after attack, conflict after another. I'm joined by a commissioner in the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, that is Honorable Abdul Aziz Farah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Mheshimiwa, thank you so much for making time for us this evening.
Thank you very much, Faisal.
MashaAllah. Mheshimiwa, going straight into it in the interest of time, because we have already lost a few minutes in addressing some of the technical issues that had appeared before the show. Now, going straight into the issue, Mheshimiwa, this is something that we have been witnessing year in, year out, time and time again. It's something that has been appearing to be quite rampant in the region. From where you sit, having being a native in that particular region, what do you think are some of the things causing these skirmishes in the area?
Thank you very much, Faisal, for first of all having me in this great studio. I think this is my first time, and it should have come before. It's not too late either. Straight to the topic, what is causing the skirmishes in northern Kenya, and particularly in Northeastern province, what used to be called Northeastern province, and now called the Northeastern region, can be attributed to several factors. To begin with, there were historical issues pertaining to marginalization. And so we can say comfortably that that region was historically marginalized by successive governments, beginning with the colonial masters that were here in this country. And so that has resulted into having the poverty index being the highest in the country, and therefore scramble for resources so that year in, year out, we will have communities fighting over scarce resources, what they call scarce resources. Resources that become scarce at certain times of the year, of the period, of the decade. So historically, they were suffering from that marginalization that has overlooked development in terms of infrastructure, in terms of water, in terms of education, in terms of security itself, in terms of everything that life needs, in terms of politics and everything. And so that accumulatively has a large effect on that region, and by extension the whole of northern Kenya. We're talking about Turkana all the way to Lamu. That whole region has suffered that historical marginalization. And so with that effect, the region has never been part of or at the same level with the rest of the country, and so people scramble over those scarce resources all the time. Having said that, there were also cultural issues that we can attribute to the problems of northern Kenya. To give you an example, I'll give you a very good example. What people call cattle rustling, or even camel rustling, or whatever you call it, that is too soft word, which we have changed to animal theft. It is theft per se, theft with violence. It seems that with some communities, still that culture has not gone away. And so still people believe that you can take somebody's cows or camels, and that's okay culturally. And so we also have, you know, some communities still believe that killing is manly. You know, it's gentlemanly to kill. And even some traditions have that if you kill somebody, you are that man who gets relations from women in the homestead. And so those backward cultural activities are still rampant in some communities. Faisal, there is also what people always refer to scarce resources that I've already alluded to when I was talking about marginalization of grazing and water points. And usually when it is the dry spell or the drought periods, these things become chaotic. And so people fight over that. And that again is translated to tribalism, clanism, and so on and so forth. And so historically, culturally, that was what used to be in parts of Africa and that part of Kenya. But conventionally, recently, there are issues to do with boundary, whether electoral, administrative, and so on and so forth. There are also issues of overlapping administrative boundaries. I'll give an example. Where you have a constituency X is reaching point Y, but administratively there is a division that spills over to the next constituency. And so there's always that scramble or that conflict over who manages where.
No, yeah.
And so you end up seeing a member of parliament building a school in a certain point B, and then the other community says this is within our jurisdiction, our administrative division, and then you find people fighting.
Interesting, interesting. Mheshimiwa, you've mentioned about marginalization. Now, being cognizant of the fact that at least 80 to 90% of the population residing around that area are from the same community, the only difference comes with clanism. And you've clearly mentioned that you feel marginalized from the rest of the country. So how does marginalization play a part in that case? Because most of the times, the communities living in the Northeastern region are fighting amongst themselves. So how does marginalization come into play in this case?
Marginalization comes in from the point of view of having little to share. And so people now, because the things are not enough, the resources are not enough, people fight over it. And so some clans or sections of the community will say this is only enough for us. So we don't want others to come in because it's already not enough for us, or it is only enough for us. And so therefore, of course, you know, when a pastoralist has cows that have not taken water for several days, he will take everything possible to make sure they get water, okay, including fighting. And so they end up, you know, fighting over those scarce resources. So marginalization has brought what is called, you know, people are not having enough all the time. Scarcity. Scarcity. Okay. So that's the problem.
That's perfectly fine. You've also mentioned briefly on matters to do with boundary. And from where I'm sitting, I think I have the right to assume that whoever is elected into office have some sense of responsibility and some exposure and education to a certain extent. Over and above that, we have the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, which has clearly set boundaries and limits to constituencies and counties, just as you've stated. Now, is it fair to say that by them surpassing or exceeding their boundaries, they are part of the cause of these conflicts?
When it comes to boundary, there are, of course, those institutions and structures that are responsible for drawing boundaries and making sure that the right boundary is drawn, and so that people don't fight over lack or mix of boundary. But historically, we've had that thing lingering on in the community. To be frank with you, Faisal, the common Mwananchi, the Wanjiku on the ground, has little problem with boundaries. And they don't know where it is. Even if you ask them today where the boundary of between constituency A and B is, they will not be able to tell you. But what happened with boundaries is that it has been politicized decade in, decade out by politicians for their own selfish gains. Such that politicians most likely or most of the time who are weak politicians who cannot regain their seat will resort to kind of modeling themselves or branding themselves as warlords defending their own communities, and so they will put themselves as people who want to help their community defend their land, so to say. And so it has been politicized, and it has become an easy way for some politicians to access power repeatedly. And so boundary itself is not really a major problem, but it is because of the politicization that has cost lives in that part of the world.
Having been a member of the National Cohesion and National Commission and Integration Commission, and being a native in that particular area, you understand well some of the issues that are going on in that particular area. You've mentioned about the warlords, the politicians who are taking advantage of that particular situation on the ground and taking advantage of the unexposed or quote-unquote uneducated Wanjiku and Abdullahi and Zahra down there on the ground, inciting them into this. How many have you convicted so far as a commission? How many have you brought to book? How many have you investigated? How many have you denied clearance to vie for some of those seats?
Well, Faisal, let me pick from the last point where you said how many have you denied them to be elected. That is not within our powers. We can't stop somebody from vying for a seat. That I think is within the realm of EACC and IEBC. But coming from that region, coming from National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, and even being a former member of parliament from that region, more specifically Mandera, we can only tame what we call hate mongers. That is within our powers, within our act, and so that's why sometimes we are called a hate commission. We go after those who incite, who do hate mongering in community, and we have dealt with several of them from that region and even other parts of Kenya. And even yesterday you've heard of an arrest somewhere in this country, and several others will follow soon, because this thing usually is escalated and amplified during when elections are at the corner, when people panic and they have nothing to show to their community that they should be re-elected, but this time they hide under that skin of the warlord, the defenders of the community, by claiming even sometimes land that is not even theirs, saying that that land is ours and I'll make sure that I shall secure that land for my community. I can authoritatively tell you there are some constituencies in this republic when politicians are campaigning, one of the conditions that they sign is sign verbally is to defend a certain portion of land. Okay. And they will be asked, if we elect you, will you make sure that,
or we make sure that we
will
get
you
this
sure that that land of ours is back? And he will swear and say, I will. And so he has to pursue that, and in the process create conflict. So it is a very risky business that they are doing.
Again, I'm going to go back to that. Being cognizant of this situation on the ground, Mheshimiwa, how many have you convicted from this particular region, knowing that they have done this? If you have spoken authoritatively, though you've spoken, that means you know of the facts on the ground. you can substantiate your claims. How many have you brought to book? How many have you recommended to the EACC to be denied certificate, recommended to the DCI to be investigated, or to the DPP or DPP to be investigated, and the likes?
There are several. There are several. I don't have the exact number of it, but there are several. There are dozens.
Dozens of them?
Yes.
So we should expect a couple of arrests?
Sure.
Couple of court cases?
Some are already in court.
Okay.
You must be following these things. Some
Yes, we are.
Some of them are in court. Some of them have opted to do it outside, the court process.
Okay.
Because our act also gives that leeway.
Outside settlement?
Yes, outside the court settlement.
Yeah. The way we saw Honorable Aisha Jumo and
yes,
Edwin Sifuna settling their issue out of court.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is there, because if they apologize to the public,
yeah,
and agree to spearheading peace and cohesion in the country, that's another way of doing it. But there are dozens, there are several who are facing court cases.
Interesting. Mheshimiwa, my attention is drawn to what you said earlier on, when you were giving your answer before you move forward. You said your mandate mainly is to tame some of these hate mongers. Is it just tame or ultimately stop, or what exactly is your mandate? Because according to the Act, you're supposed to block some of these things from happening completely. That's why you're given the powers to summon and people you can recommend an arrest or someone. That's why you're given those powers, Mheshimiwa, and privileges.
Well, unfortunately, within Kenya, in this country, for you to block somebody from leadership, you have to go through a lot of processes and court battles. We will try to bar some of them. We want to create what is called the shame list. We want to have a wall of shame list for those people who are not fit to lead in this country.
Okay.
And so, but at the end of the day, it will be a court battle. But for us, we will do our best. We will make sure that people who are of questionable character do not make to leadership. And that's our resolve and the mandate that we have.
Interesting. Thank you. I'd love to know about the current state of the ongoing Mandera Sulhu, the mediation talks that are ongoing. But before that, how true is it that there are security apparatus involved in these conflicts and skirmishes, either protecting, either attacking on behalf, or ignoring, in that case, ignoring an attack that maybe they had a hint about it? How true is it about the involvement of security apparatus in these conflicts?
There is some truth in it, and every part of this country that we've been, where there's a security issue or insecurity issue, one of the reasons wananchi and even the local leadership will give is the laxity of the security apparatus. Laxity in terms of not responding in good time, in terms of sometimes not arresting the culprits and the perpetrators of insecurity, laxity in terms of not disarming or dealing with gangs that are armed within that particular county or constituency, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, wananchi will always tell you that if it were not for the laxity of the security apparatus, this will not have happened. For example, some group of people will steal cattle from another homestead and drive all the way across the county to a place of, let's say, 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers away. And wananchi will ask you, where was the security apparatus all this time? Because that distance of 200 kilometers is administered by security apparatus, beginning from the chief to the county commissioner. So the question becomes, where were they? Where is the district officer? Where is the deputy county commissioner? Where is the OCPD? Where, and so on and so forth. When all that has happened, and by the way, the people who drive those animals are not empty-handed. They are armed to the teeth
Yeah.
with modern weaponry. So that is there, and it's a question that we grapple with all the time with the security apparatus to make sure that that notion is removed from Wananchi, and that Wananchi are very comfortable that they have their country and they have their taxes well used and their security guaranteed.
As a commission, have you tried maybe writing to the police bosses, talk of IPOA, the Independent Police Oversight Authority, or the National Police Service Commission for that matter, maybe recommending transfers of some officers who are perceived to be involved in some of these skirmishes or perceived to be supporting or neglecting their duties in this case for as far as providing security to the common Wananchi in the area and avoiding conflict is concerned?
Well, we do not micromanage the National Police Service or the provincial administration, but we time in, time out really recommend to them to pull up their socks in areas where we find there is laxity. We do advise them to deal with certain issues that are happening in that specific county. For example, if there are armed militia freely moving around in a certain county undeterred, we will tell them you should deal with that before we deal with the mind and heart of Kenyans. Because NCIC is not hardware. We are the software part of the solution. We deal with the heart and minds of Kenyans. We are supposed to bring them together so that they can live in a cohesive and peaceful way. So our partner number one becomes the armed forces, the police force, the provincial administration, and you know, all those people who are mandated to guarantee security to Kenyans.
Have you thought of maybe recommending hiring of private investigators, maybe to find out exactly who are some of these rogue police officers who are involved in this case, and action to be taken against them for that matter?
No, that is not our mandate. Our mandate is to do our own investigations of what is happening, and then we will tell the IG to do his work as required. Mm-hmm. But by the way, we also have our own investigators seconded to us from DCI, but we don't do the oversight authority, police oversight authority, the IPOA work. We don't do that, but we recommend to government. We advise government on its policies and it is you know, how they carry out its operations, so that we all work together for a peaceful Kenya.
Sheikh, as I said earlier, I think 80 to 90% of this of people living in this particular region or this area per se are Muslims, and we all know what the religion of Islam says about matters peace and matters conflicts and all that. Recently, and I must congratulate you for this, I'm sure you're one of the brains behind it, having Sheikh Umar together with a delegation of sheikhs to lead the Mandera talks that are currently ongoing. Why hadn't you thought about this from the beginning, that is involving Sheikh actively on some of these cases?
Good question. Faisal, first of all, let me recap of what is required in peace building. Usually, it is the shoe wearer who knows where the shoe pinches. So our formula of doing things is that we deal with the people who are conflicting, people who have conflict, to deal with their problem first. We bring them together. We give dialogue chance number one, number two, number three, so that they dialogue themselves and reach consensus on issues that affect them themselves. Peace is not imported. It is usually with the people who have the problem to solve their problem. So we did engage the two communities that were warring or were having problems in that county to talk and deliberate on the issues, see where they can agree, and live as brothers and sisters peacefully in that part of the world. And so they did, and resolved many, many issues that were, causing conflict and tensions in that part of the world. So when it reaches a point where now they cannot move forward, there was a stalemate, is when you ask for an external arbiter. And that's when we had to shop for an external arbiter. And that arbiter itself usually comes from the teams themselves. We don't force an arbiter to them. So they had several options, 1, 2, 3, and finally they settled on Sheikh Omar because of his integrity, because of his knowledge, because of his experience. If you might have researched, he did another Accord in 2005 in the same region. And so because of the wealth of experience he has in the region and his personality, they settled on Sheikh Omar, and therefore we had no option but to bring him to do the arbitration. And that's why we chose Sheikh Omar.
So this is something that we expected to continue now, this particular model of arbitration and maslah between two fighting communities? Is this something that is it a precedence that's basically being set now?
It doesn't work everywhere. It only works in specific places. For example, it will not work, for example, between Pokot and Turkana in Kapedo. I don't think that kind of model will work.
True.
But in Northeastern, Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, it will work. Okay. But I don't think it will work in other regions where the communities are not predominantly Muslim. It's going to be very hard. I will give you a very good example of Marsabit. In Marsabit, the communities that are fighting, Community A has half of its population Muslim and half of its population Christian. The other way is also true. Community B has got half of its population Muslim and half Christians.
True.
And at the end of the day, that kind of a model might not work in Marsabit. But what works in Marsabit is the council of elders of those communities, the political leadership, the professionals, and the business community, and so on and so forth.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Mheshimiwa, as we are moving towards concluding this discussion, you said peace is not imported, and the wearer of the shoe know where exactly it pinches. In this context, Sheikh, I'm asking, do you think it would have been better to devolve the security function so that it could be handled at the county level, because those are the counties may be understanding their security issues better and their insecurities better? Do you think that would have been better?
No. Big no. If devolve security to the counties, we will have more chaos in those parts of the world. Reason being, they are already not trusting one another. And the people who are not trusting one another, assume in a county there are predominantly two big communities, and they don't trust one another, and therefore one of the community becomes or produces the governor, and they are fighting. It is human nature that governor might be leaning towards his own community. And so there might not be a fair ground for the surfaces of security in that county. Even now, before you asked me a different question when I was giving the reasons why there's insecurity in that part of the world, one of them is devolution. Reason being, while we thought from the beginning that devolution is a blessing, it brought other issues with it itself, including insecurity, including marginalization again within the county itself. And so there's a lot of mistrust within the county. because people complain that resources are not well distributed. Resources are, you know, kind of going one side. You hear some places, in some counties where we have been, people saying that this conflict is happening because the governor is involved, and so on and so forth. So with the experience we have for the past 7 years in devolution, we don't recommend that that happens in our country.
Interesting, interesting. You're the first person who is a native of the Northeastern region, from the Northeastern region to be precise, who I have had saying that devolution is not as blessing, honestly speaking.
I need to correct you.
This is quite surprising.
I want to correct you.
Please.
It was a blessing.
Yes.
And I can remember the first day when we were swearing in our governor.
Yeah.
And I was a fresh MP also.
Mm-hmm.
The swearing in was happening in my county, in my constituency, sorry.
Okay.
And so I was the MC of the function.
Okay.
I was the host MP.
You're the host, yeah.
And when I was giving my speech, I remember saying that Mandera County is born today. And I can't remember exactly the date, but it's 2013 somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That Mandera County is born today. Devolution is a blessing in terms of development.
Okay.
We have our own money, which we can manage. But I told you it came with some issues.
Okay.
Yes, some issues.
Now that makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense. Which can be fixed.
Which can be fixed.
Okay.
With good leadership,
yeah.
it can be fixed.
Okay.
It can be fixed. But of course, the counties cannot manage security.
Interesting. Mheshimiwa, you see, I once interviewed a former governor who still has ambitions to vie again in the upcoming general election, and he held different opinion on matters security and devolving the security function, particularly in this context of external attacks from the neighboring Al-Shabaab militia. Because right now, as we speak, your county, Mandera, is under attack. Just got an attack the other day, which, I mean, it's something that's quite rampant. So he believes, and many people do believe, that if the security function could have been devolved, then it would not only ensure security among them, but even from the outside forces, from the outside people.
The governor candidate is right. I'm right also.
I agree with you.
Yes. Why the governor is right is that from his point of view, what he's saying is correct. That will have been perfect. But with their clanism, with their biases, will it work? We had an issue, you know, this is a national, it's a TV that is being watched nationwide.
Yeah.
Kenyans need some truth and history of what is happening in this country. We had issues where even people queried what we call the National Police Reserves, or KPR sometimes. Some communities fighting over that, saying that if you give more KPR to this community, they will fight community X. You know? Okay. If only these people stopped their tribalism and clanism, that will have been the perfect position that the governor has voiced.
In this case then, what do you think can come in as a long-term solution, especially in this topic we are talking about, the Northeastern region? We are talking about our Muslim brethren in this context. What do you think can be a long-term solution for these people in this area?
Number one, the government of the day must, first of all, solve this thing that politicians have used, center, left, right, called boundary issues. Where there are contentions or there are issues of boundary, the government must solve that once and for all, so that there's no more excuse about this is my place, that is not your place, this is within this constituency and that is not in this constituency, and so on and so forth. So the issues of boundary conflict, you've heard of a high-ranking police officer killed in Kapedo.
Yeah.
that place is unmanageable because Tiati constituency in Baringa thinks that Kapedo town is in Tiati constituency. And Turkana East thinks that is in Turkana East. And that issue must be brought to a closure so that the pretext of politicians using it for their own advantage should cease once and for all. Number two, IBC should also take its mandate seriously and see wherever in this country there are issues, iron them out so that there is no excuse again for a Kenyan to die around. Most importantly, the communities that are living in that region must store away their weapons. They must. That is, it is for their good. And use dialogue to solve their issues. We are not in the era of guns, of fighting. We're in the era of consensus building. We are in the era of dialogue. So there should be dialogue. Whenever an issue arises, they should come together, dialogue, solve their problems, and move forward. Because if they continue this way, they will remain in the marginalization that we talked about forever. Governors are having in some counties difficulty in developing their counties because of insecurity. Some projects cannot take off because of insecurity. They are using a lot of resources to solve problems of insecurity, which will have gone to build classrooms or roads or hospitals or boreholes and so on and so forth. So they should also free the minds of their leaders who are preoccupied with security issues every day, who are always in the boardroom discussing insecurity. Allow them to think for development, to think policies. By the way, do you know that it's very rare to see a legislator from that part of the world who has brought bills and motions to the House? There are very few, if any, maybe zero, because that is not their daily work. Their daily work is insecurity.
Solve issues of insecurity on the ground.
Yes. So they are either responding to problems or they are in OB lining up, making noise that remove this OCPD, remove this county commissioner, take more soldiers to that place. My constituency has been attacked last night. I need more security, and so on and so forth. And employing a chief and removing a chief and petty things all through. So they should be freed to think legislatively, to think development-wise, and not anymore on those petty and dirty backward activities. So I think that is the way to go as a region, so that we can catch up with the rest of the country.
Yeah.
We are making noise all the time that the equalization fund should be operationalized. Our money should not be reduced. But at the end of the day, are we having a vision to make sure that equalization fund, which has a time limit, we want to maximize, we want to use it for our maximal use? Do we use our resources in the county maximally? So these are the questions that region should ask itself, instead of fighting one another all the time. And stealing a cattle, a cow, and you lose your life. I was given a story somewhere in Samburu that a young man, his father passed on. His father left 300 cows with him. Should be a rich young man. Mm-hmm. But he went trading. And he started stealing 10 cows, As he drove them, the owners caught up with him and killed him. That is, the useless life that people live in. I mean, we should get out of that and join other Kenyans to building this country, because this country cannot have one section of it lagging behind. It's like having your lorry, one tire punctured. You can't move forward. So we want to move forward as a country so that we become like the Asian tigers very soon, and get out of the poverty where we are in. That region is rich. We have solar abundantly, we have wind power abundantly, we have oil, we have minerals, we have livestock, we have human resource. We are rich. There is business. You know, we are in a region where business is booming. For example, Mandera is in a triangle. We neighbor Somalia, we neighbor Ethiopia,
and Kenya.
And we are in Kenya. And so we are in, a three-corner place. And Mandera has been a place known for its business. So we need peace in this part of the country so that we move ahead as a country. Let's not pull the other country backwards, you know. We have a lot of money coming to our counties through the counties. Let's use it wisely, prioritize the projects, and then we will catch up with Kenya in the nearest future.
Inshallah, inshallah. Amazing words of wisdom right there from Honorable Abdul Aziz Ali Farah.
But just to add, the other issues that we have in the region is the proliferation of small arms.
Okay.
And
possession.
The arms in the counties. And you know, when illegal arms are in the hands of some Kenyans, you know what tempts them, to do. Yeah. And then the borders that we have the Somali border, you know what it is. We have the Ethiopian border, and we have the Southern Sudan border, and all those things are borders that affect our security as a country. We also have the terrorist activities in our country, and you rightly mentioned it in northern Kenya, how they do their activities. Land grabbing is another issue that also causes insecurity in parts of this country. Not only Northeastern, the whole country.
The whole country, yeah.
Land grabbing, where wale wanaitwanga maponyenyi, they grab a big parcel of land, and then it creates conflict in the place. Yeah. Corruption, as you mentioned from the beginning, is there, and so many other issues that collectively make this country insecure.
Mheshimiwa, maybe on those things, and you being a member of the NCIC, have you thought of a strategic plan, of an action plan that may drive this country towards the promised land, that the best land, the ideal Kenya that we all have on the top of our minds, from that perspective?
Yes, we did. We have a strategy which we have also incorporated in our new strategic plan, which will be printed sometime in February. We thought of thinking outside the box. And historically, what agencies did or used to do was, what is called hopping, touching Mandera County, talking to them for 2-3 days, leaving them, going to Mombasa, talking 2 days, leaving them. We have discarded that kind of hopping exercises. What we have now decided to do is that we narrow down to a region or a county. Until we solve that problem to the end, we are not leaving. So that's the new strategy we have. And so while we are in Mandera now, while we are on Marsabit, we will want to take it to a conclusion. We are almost concluding Narok. Yeah, we are almost concluding. When we were almost concluding the North Rift, the Pokot and the Turkana issue, the recent issues happened. So that is the new strategy. We want to get results and results only, nothing else.
Localize the issues.
Localize the issue, solve it, finish it, and then celebrate the victory.
Inshallah.
We did it in Banisa, in Mandera.
No.
Yeah, when I was there in the International Peace Day last year, and we celebrated it very colorfully. So we want to celebrate that victory at the end of it.
Inshallah. And right here we'll be right here to support you and give you any kind of support that you need from representing, of course, the Fourth Estate, and also being a Kenyan and being a Muslim. We will do anything it takes to support you in your efforts to bring about peace in this country, inshallah. Thank you so much, Honorable Abdul Aziz Ali Farah, for your time from the NCAC. Jazakallah khair for amazing words. One thing that I borrowed, among the many things that I took from this interview tonight, one thing that I got is that peace cannot be imported. It is something in deep within you. Amazing.
We also say
words.
peace is made when there is peace.
Peace is made when there is peace.
You cannot make peace when there are chaos.
Precisely. So you have to cease fire first.
Yes.
Come onto the table.
Yes.
Then you can discuss.
Yes.
Amazing. And we need to start talking, because the moment we stop talking, we start fighting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Honorable Abdulaziz Ali Farah. Thank you so much, our beloved viewers, for keeping us company. Thank you so much to the crew that made this possible tonight. See you next week, simply sometime, as we will be tackling another issue that will be affecting the country at that time. I've been your host right here from Horizon TV Live Real Talk. My name is Faisal Kassim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.